Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hi, this is Celine Williams hosting from Ontario for Canada's podcast. Today I'm with Elisa Birnbaum, who is a storyteller of social impact. She is the publisher-editor of Elle Magazine, founder of Elle Communications, and author of In the Business of Change. Elisa, thank you for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Technically, thank you for joining me again. We had some technical issues, so this will be...
We did.
We may repeat a few things, and I'm just going to give everyone the warning of it, because it's always good to acknowledge it.
It happens all too often, yes.
Well, it's the reality of working from home, right?
Exactly.
You have a book about change, we'll talk about that. Well, this is just real life these days. So I want to start by, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got to doing what you're doing now, right? This magazine that you publish, you have a communications company, you're the author of a book. How did this all come to fruition?
I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm really not, because this is as though we're starting fresh.
First time, that's right.
First time. I actually came to this point in a somewhat of a different route that some other people might take. I'm not a journalist by training or a communications person by training. I actually studied law. I really enjoyed the study of law, and I always wanted, law itself was always fascinating to me. So it was something that I pursued wholeheartedly. But as I was completing my degree, I really started enjoying a lot of, I was always a writer and I was always enjoying writing, but I just happened to be pitching different ideas and stories, and I started to get published. And I was really enjoying the process and really the experience. And so when I completed my degree, I just said to myself, I'll give myself a couple of years and try this thing out, as crazy as it might sound, because who works as a writer for a living? Really, it's a tough thing to do. And law is always there to fall back on. But that's was over 15 years ago, and I'm still doing what I do. I guess I'm enjoying it. And in terms of, the journalism and my communications, I just started getting asked to do writing on the communication side of things. So I started to do both journalism and communications. And as far as the evolution in terms of my niche, my focus in social impact, I was just always pulled towards stories of social change, social impact. And I was writing a lot for an online site focused on the charitable sector and writing a lot about nonprofits. And then about 10 years ago, a little bit over 10 years ago, I started hearing more about this whole concept of social enterprise, social entrepreneurship, when entrepreneurs are able to take business skills, business savvy, and put them to good use to make a difference. So they start a business with the mission of tackling challenges, environmental challenge, social challenges through their business venture. And I was just fascinated by it. Started pitching a bunch of ideas to various editors, most of whom in Canada did not know yet what I was talking about. And it was a big process. I was one of the first people, I think, to write about social enterprise for the Globe and Mail. I got published there. But I realized, wow, this is an area that a lot of people are not writing. It was, now they are, but over 10 years ago, they were not, especially in Canada. And I was learning about it through folks, journalists in the US and the UK, where it had become much more prevalent there. My co-founder and I, an editor, and I started Change Magazine, which is a digital publication of social entrepreneurship, and focused on stories of social enterprise. And so we started that over 10 years ago. It's evolved a lot. It originally was just focused on Canada, evolved to cover stories from all over the world. And now we have a podcast also called In the Business of Change, like my book. And so we're doing a bunch of different things with the magazine. And I have since become the publisher and editor-in-chief. And so I'm doing that while still working in communication. So still have a communications company, have various clients, many of whom in the social impact sector as well, but some of whom are not, a range of clients, and helping them tell their stories. So I'm sort of juggling both things at this point.
So, okay, I'm going to start one way and then we'll end up going another way at the end of this. So, publishing has changed, online or not, digital or not, a lot in the last 3 years, let alone 10. So
Yes.
what have been some of the challenges and successes? What have you seen in your experience with sea change specifically? Because I think you have a really unique lens, not only in terms of the topic, and you were sort of let's say the first, whether the official first, but really one of the first doing this, talking
Sure.
about this in Canada. So not only in terms of, hey, we were focusing on something that wasn't a real focus when we started, as well as everything has changed so much in that world. So I'd love to hear sort of your reflections. What were challenges? What has worked really well? What have you seen? What do
Yeah.
you think might happen still?
I don't know what will happen, to be honest. It's a good question. I don't know if I would have predicted where we'd be today 10 years ago when we started, over 10 years ago. Um, but I know when we first started, we were kind of the unicorn. We were like anomaly. We were different. We were focusing on an area that was new and fresh. Now a lot more people are talking about it. So there's a more competition in terms of that. Although I love the fact that it's grown. I feel like I played a part in that. And I feel that's something that I really, I'm proud of. I'm a fan of supporting other organizations and people that are doing good work in this area. So that's all good. But I do know that when we started, we had a couple of organizations who were supporting us with grants and other ways. Just the way it goes, they were organizations that sort of, like many organizations, didn't have all that much money to go around. So that didn't last for many years. And we had to find other ways to support ourselves. And at first, advertising was also easier to come by because we were new and fresh and unique. And everyone was, wow, this is the place, we can advertise. Less and less so now. The competition is fierce to get advertisers right now in the digital space because everyone's doing it. And there's a bunch of unique stories out there. So we moved over to sponsored content stories. And so we work with organizations and then we also work just even without sponsors. We just work with various organizations and who want to tell good stories, and we're a good platform for them to do so. So we just work together and combine our efforts that way. We've learned collaboration is incredibly important right now, more so than ever before. But it's competitive out there in terms of getting the word out, the content out. You have to really be on top of things. You have to be able to push it. You have to, spend time and money sometimes on social media and marketing and PR, which we didn't have to do as much when we first started. So I don't know. I don't know where we're going to go next. I think, originally it was like, oh, digital's pulling ads away from print. That was the big story. Now everyone's digital. So we're all just kind of pulling, we're competing for advertising. I don't think advertising is as strong a lever as it used to be. So sponsored content, partnerships, collaboration, unique ways to tell your story, those are all becoming, the creativity of it all, that's playing a bigger role. And I think that'll continue that way, I have a feeling.
Well, I think I'm not surprised. I think that's really interesting, especially as we're stepping into a space where anyone can be a content creator.
Exactly.
And 10 years ago, not everyone could be a content creator. And certainly the world of publishing did not come from any kind. I don't care whether it's books or magazines, but newspapers did not come from the place of anyone is a content creator.
Right. No, you're right. Absolutely right. And we're up against a lot of that. There's a lot of people who, I'm a journalist. Okay. I mean, who am I to judge? But it's everyone out there is, they have a valid right to be where they want to be and tell their stories. That's great. But it is much more. And the other thing that I didn't add to that is, a lot of people are doing the paywall. We didn't go that direction, but it is something that we've thought about. And it is something that, there's a good argument for it. And we might end up going in that direction. I'm not sure yet. We've had a lot of discussions about it. We've heard some success and some major failures with that. So, but that's something else that people will do to help them, to sustain themselves. But yeah, the fact that every second person is a blogger, is a writer, has something to say, you're up against a lot of eyeballs. They're trying to compete for eyeballs. So yeah.
So in this new world, what has collaboration? I'm just curious what collaboration looks like for a publication these days. Like, I think I think collaboration is great in lots of different ways. Don't get me wrong, but I imagine it's a unique lens, unique perspective in your world.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm not someone who shies away from, if someone's doing similar stories or something that I feel like we can work on together, I think it's better to put two heads together than both try to tell similar stories and compete for, viewers and listeners and all that stuff. So sometimes it's just a matter of, we have a good series that we want to work on. Would you like to work on it with us? We have a writer who can write, let's say it's a 5 stories, you two, we'll do 2, and we'll promote it together and we'll do it together. Other times it's a matter of, an organization has a social enterprise on the ground. They're doing great work. They want to share their story. So they do reach out to us and we help them. They help us tell the story, put it together. But it's not as like, it's not the formalized way of doing that of like, let's work together and we'll tell the story together. We'll help you. You'll give us some content. We'll make sure that it's unbiased in the sense that it's objective still. And it doesn't sound like this overly promotional type of, like it's just more of a lessons learned. Let's focus on what you learned from this and what other people can take away. So as long as we have that focus, I feel it's less, it doesn't sound like we're just kind of promoting someone who wants to write in our pages, but that's part of the collaboration. It's part of working together and saying, okay, you want to get the story out because you want to teach people about what you've done. Let's help you do that. So there's various ways of doing that. And there's still ongoing conversations with different collaborative opportunities that we have right now.
So I'm curious about this idea of being a storyteller in this space, because it sounds like this was something that, listen, I'm going to call you a pioneer, Elisa. Yeah, you're welcome. But it sounds like something that in many ways you did pioneer. Listen, storytelling has been around for ages, but it hasn't been around everywhere, right? We haven't always thought about, it's like business is starting to think about telling brand stories finally, right? So it's starting to come into play in different places is my point. So when you were starting this and you call yourself a storyteller of social change, and rightfully so, social impact, right? Tell me a little bit about the whether it's how you've seen it change, whether, why you thought that storytelling was going to be valuable in this space or where there were gaps. I'd love to hear a little bit about this because it's because you are the pioneer of it.
Say that one more time.
That's right. You can take that. It's yours.
So the question is around the concept, the storytelling element, like how, what gaps was I filling? So I mean, I'm not sure if I had. It's basically when I started the magazine, there was like we didn't have as much stories here in Canada, and it seemed like an obvious gap that wouldn't it be great if they're telling these stories in the US and UK. They're doing tremendous work there. They're helping promote the social enterprise environment, the landscape, but we're not doing it enough here. So it's really taking that the stance and saying, I believe in this concept. I believe in that this has the capacity to impact a lot of lives and make a big difference. Let me fill that storytelling gap by starting a magazine and telling other stories. I mean, I was still, I'm still independent and freelancer. I still did a lot of writing. I started writing for the National Post for a couple of years. I was writing a column for them on social entrepreneurship as well here in Canada. So I was doing a bunch of different things, all with the same aim of like, these stories need to be told. We're not going to help support the movement of social enterprise unless they are told, because storytelling, I think, is immensely significant to making a difference. Like I really feel like you're not going to, if you don't get your story out, then whatever you're doing on the ground is sort of quiet and is not going to get very far. But I felt that was sort of the role that I had to play. And there is like, I was sort of that was a mission-driven goal of mine, and it remains that way. I'm very passionate about it.
So do you feel like, just a curiosity, do you feel like there's a difference between, like, let's call it straight up journalism, so what might have been happening 15 years ago, like people would report on, well, here's a thing that's happening in whatever the case may be, and the type of storytelling you're talking about, or is it more of an evolution?
It's interesting. I think about that a lot. I think it's more of an evolution. I think you see more and more journalists who are sort of taking a stance and becoming more activist in their storytelling. That being said, I try my best, even when I do take this role. Overall, I'm supporting this sector, but I do still like to show the nitty-gritty side of everything and to show the pros and cons, and to actually make a point to idealistic people out there that, it's not, social enterprise is not the be all end all, and that there is challenges with it. It's not always the answer. I talk about that a lot in my book. So yes, I think there is an evolution of us taking a stance more so than we used to. But I still do try to play an objective role in my job as a journalist, and to ensure that I am showing every side of the issue, but overall promoting when it's needed that it can make a big difference. So but there is certainly an evolution. Yeah.
Well, and the reason I'm curious, and thank you for sharing that, because the reason I'm curious of it is we often think, at least when back in the olden days when I was in school and we talked about journalism and what journalists did, it was all about a lack of bias.
Right.
Which is why I think storytelling wasn't a part of it at a certain point. It was literally reporting facts.
Right.
That's it.
Right. So that is very interesting. And I think about that a lot. And I talk about that a lot. Now, to be perfectly honest, when I'm doing other stories, like there's some stories that call for complete objectivity, and it's it might be writing a report on something or
Sure.
And it's, so I think it depends on, the focus, and it depends on the medium, and it depends on, but yes, I think that a lot of objectivity is lost along the way. And I think that's a bit dangerous. So I think we have to be mindful of that. Not everyone agrees with me. Some people would say, activism is what we're here for. I don't think so. I think we need to be objective as much as we can and show the facts. And so you'll see every article that I write on that I get published on our site, there is an element of objectivity, even if that deep down, okay, they're supporting this and we're going to promote this because they get it. But what about the weaknesses, and what about the challenges? And let's speak freely about that and openly about that, because I do believe still in that journalistic integrity. And it's important to promote that in my book and in my websites. And so, but it is a fine line. And I do know that I sometimes, I am balancing it, because you want to go rah, 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 but at the same time, I'm like, wait, let's make sure that we got the facts right, and that we give people an objective perspective here. So, yeah. But it's a good point. It's a good question.
And I think it is a balance, and I think that it is I think for a lot of people it comes down to external lens, not a journalist lens, but it's like, I want to hear the facts, and I'm happy to hear your opinion as well, but not your opinion over the facts, right? I think there's and I think old school journalism went very far to facts only. Let's just present information. And I think advocacy can go too much into we have a 4-year history of this right now we can look back on, where it's like facts are irrelevant. Let's just rhetoric only, right? And I think there is a balance there. So I appreciate that your perspective on that line.
Yeah, and I'm constantly thinking about it and conscious of it. So yeah.
So you mentioned your book, so I want to talk about your book for a couple of minutes. Can you tell me a little bit about it? In the Business of Change, tell me about the book.
Sure. So I basically wanted to, there's a lot of wonderful folks doing great work in social enterprise, like I mentioned, all over the world. And there's only so much you can get to in a magazine and column. So I wanted to really delve into profiling different social entrepreneurs in different contexts and different who are tackling different issues and challenges around the world, and really get to the heart of it. And this goes also to the whole balanced view, because I wanted to address the challenges, the lessons learned, to provide more than just, great storytelling, which is what I was hoping for, but also to provide something that people who are looking to do the same thing can learn from it. So the book goes through, I profile about 65 social entrepreneurs around the world, and really delve into the who, what, why, when, why did they start this? What are they trying to tackle? What is their mission? What are they doing? What are their challenges? What are their lessons? And, each chapter is sort of set out according to those lessons that they've learned. So hopeful for other people to have some takeaways. And we made it into, we had a print book, and then we made it into an audio book as well. So for those who don't like to read and prefer to listen, so it was a big project. And that's also why my podcast is called In the Business of Change, because some of those first interviews I did for the book, I also took a lot of the content and produced podcasts out of them. So that was how it all started. And now I continue with the podcast with other folks. But that's why the name is exactly the same, because it was born of the same material.
I love that. So where can people find your book? Is it available at all your regular bookstores, retailers?
It is. Technically speaking, it's available at various retailers where you normally would get your books. And of course, the ultimate Amazon. It's there, the audio as well as print. So anyone can go there as well and pick it up.
Amazing.
Or download it. Yeah.
In, being mindful of time, is there anything that we didn't get to, or that you'd like to share, whether it's a lesson or something that you'd leave our listeners with, a lot of whom are entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs and might be thinking, whether it's, hey, I'd love to do something like start a magazine or be a journalist, or I want my business to have social impact in some way.
Yeah. I mean, I would say go for it. And all those, here's the thing. I'm a big supporter of doing something that you find meaningful in life and pushing for it and persevering and keep going at it. I also am a big believer in having your eyes fully wide open, and understanding the realities on the ground. And for, in the world of journalism, it is a tough grind. But, there's a lot of unicorns. There's a lot of folks who have survived and are surviving this, a very highly competitive environment. And they're doing what they like, and they're enjoying it, and they're telling good stories. I would say, back to our conversation, though, that it's important to, I think, if you're going to be a journalist, to really balance the telling of the story that you're passionate about, but also being open and mindful and conscious of the realities and showing both sides, in the same way that I would suggest, if you're looking to do this, or if you're looking to do anything, to do that to yourself too, but put that out there. So be a mindful journalist, be a conscious journalist, try to be as balanced as possible, and not just, take on a cause and push it fully without seeing both sides of stories and seeing, how you can actually provide a contextual and balanced story. And the same would go for your own career. Like, there's so much that you can do. Try to do something that's meaningful. And if that means starting a business that has social impact, I'm all for it. Just know what you're getting into and understand, that social entrepreneurship is not the answer to everything, but it could really work nicely if you do it right. And just read my book. There's a lot of great resources out there. And I would really suggest that you do a lot of reading and ask a lot of questions. People call me up all the time and email me. Yes. And I'm happy to, spend some time with people to mentor and to talk them through or provide other resources for them. It's a wonderful, wonderful way of running a business. Business doesn't have to be all about profit. It could really make a difference, and still, you can still do well. And it's a valid and wonderful way of spending your days. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
I love that, and I think it reminds, and I feel like it might be B Corp, but one of the companies who has the triple bottom line, where it's like people, profit, and planet. So it's not one over the other. Yeah. It really is. It's not a bad thing to be mindful of all of the aspects of running a business and what that really looks like. And that inside of what you're saying is what I hear is like, yeah, you can run a business that has these impacts, but go in with your eyes open and context matters, right? Like,
Absolutely.
I joke all the time that my go-to saying is like context is king and queen. It's matters. Let's stop pretending it doesn't.
Absolutely. Agree.
Yeah. So thank you, Elisa, for joining me. For those of the listeners who want to learn more about Elisa, you can find her online at seechangemagazine.com, which, by the way, you can also find her podcast, In the Business of Change, which I highly recommend checking out. And for everyone listening today, thank you for listening to Canada's podcast. Like, comment, and subscribe to all our channels to get the latest podcasts from entrepreneurs across Canada.